most of these grocers make their money now renting out their shelf space. They call them malls without walls. Your eye level is everything. Even if you go online, you go to Amazon or Walmart, you'll see sponsored by, that's the same thing. And what's getting scary too is Walmart just bought a TV company called Vizio. Have you ever seen Vizio, they're flat screen TVs? Okay. They bought them because of ads when you stream. So basically Walmart doesn't do sliding fees, like straight up pay to play. But you talk to anyone in the grocery industry, they know if you buy ads on Walmart TV, you're probably gonna get good product placement. Yeah. It's the same thing. So it's like, even if you have a good carrot juice, how are you gonna get, first of all, how are you gonna get on the shelf if Walmart wants you to give a free case? Are you gonna buy ads? There's such a hurdle to even get in. Yeah. It's hard to get to the consumer. Right. And so it's like, it's not like they're offering the best product or the cheapest, it's just they're using their market dominance to lock in their dominance.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast. I'm Lindley Dixon, co-director of the Real Organic Project. We're a grassroots, farmer-led movement with an add-on organic food label to distinguish crops grown in healthy soils and livestock raised on well-managed pasture, all without synthetic fertilizers or toxic chemicals. You just heard from author and agricultural economist Austin Frerick. His book, Barons, investigates the corporations that own America's food system. Austin sat down with Dave this April when he visited the Northeast to speak at Dartmouth College about grocery store monopolies and how they're harming farmers, workers, and eaters alike, and how the government has antitrust laws in place that are simply being ignored.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast, right? I'm really pleased to be talking with Austin Frerick, whom, Austin, I just think your book is so significant, right? Barons. It talks about a lot of things the Real Organic Project talks about, but it has this deep perspective on what is happening. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of struggled for quite a while with what is happening, and Zephyr Teachout really helped me understand it, but so did you. So Barons is about?
Yeah, so my book, I profile 7 robber barons, but I realize they're really just narrative devices to tell you these structural stories. Like, I like thinking at 10,000 feet, and I want to understand systems. But I worked on this book for 5 years, and I realized that's really abstract writing. By using the narrative device, the robber baron thing, I'm telling you those stories.
Right.
It's like my dairy chapter is not my nerdiest chapter. It reads like a magazine article though, but it's really about checkoffs. Like, I'm obsessed with checkoffs. Yeah. So you're reading about a punchy story of this dairy baron, how they built this empire of a fancy bougie milk, but hidden in there is I'm teaching you a concept.
Right, and unlike J.D. Rockefeller the first, it's not that this one dairy baron is controlling, a quarter of America. It's that this pattern of this incredible concentration of wealth in the food system replicates.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, here's the thing, there's probably another 10 dairy farmers I could have profiled. Part of it, to be frank with you, is I want to change up the stories. I didn't want to tell the same rich story over and over. So like my hog baron, I kind of view them as my trashy Florida new money. Cargill's my grain baron, and that's my aristocratic old Connecticut money. And so the stories are changing. That way you get, as a reader, I want to hook you. Like, that's my goal, is to like, how do I give this book to my parents who didn't go to college, who can get it, understand this, and find the stories interesting? And part of it too, what I realized is, and this is a weird analogy to make, is I was really influenced by Mel Brooks when he talked about The Producers, that movie. Because part of it is he wanted to make Hitler into a clown. He wanted to take away their power. But making someone into a clown, laughing at them, you take away their power. And by using this robber baron thing and kind of making them in cartoons, I want to empower people. Because right now, especially now, given recent things in America, people are shutting down. They don't feel like they can make a change. And by making these these characters into cartoons, I'm also showing people we've been here before, so they can feel like, oh, this is so ridiculous that a dairy farmer lives at the Ritz-Carlton, Puerto Rico, that I can do something about it.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things you did when you selected your barons is they were all barons in the food system.
Yeah.
So why did you choose the food system?
I mean, food is everything. I mean, food is who we are. I mean, that's a good question because I think a few things. One, I think it's just because I'm an Iowan. I mean, Iowa is to the food system what Hollywood is to films.
Yeah.
I grew up in it where, my dad was a truck driver, mom ran a bakery. But I also just love gardening.
Yeah.
I think for the food for me is, it's both, I see the worst of America right now, but also we'll see the best of what it could be. And that's a weird thing to grapple with.
Yeah.
Especially with a book that seems dark like this. Most of the people I met writing this book are good people. You realize most people are just trying to provide for their family and make a living, but it's really the greed of a few that are holding people back. And so as you see all this darkness, you see what the system could be too. So that's something, and I think you see it to me the most in my hog chapter. My hog chapter is about Iowa, how Iowa broke, regulatory capture. Iowa should be the Tuscany of North America, but right now, second highest cancer rate, water crisis, obesity crisis.
Right.
And so I sit there and
it kind of started as paradise. I mean,
I had the paradise of Iowa. I grew up in the paradise of Iowa and it fell apart. I'm the first one in my family to go to college and I've had such a life.
Yeah.
I had the American dream.
Right.
But I know if I was my peers, a lot of them I had some lucky things break my way.
Right.
But I also know maybe if I was born today, the cards wouldn't play out. My parents at 25 bought a house, like a new house. Yeah. And at the time, my mom was cutting hair and my dad was delivering keg beer. You can't do that in America.
It was
today.
doable then.
It was doable then. And we went on family vacations once a year. But Iowa was this middle class thing and neoliberalism just broke it.
So how did it break it?
Neoliberalism to me is just a fancy way of saying laissez-faire.
Okay.
Race to the bottom, deregulation. And here's the thing,
This is like Milton Friedman would be the patron saint of that.
Yes. And here's the thing with Milton Friedman types, they're always a dime a dozen. There's always going to be hacks for the oligarchs. His literature, it sounds good, but it's just stupid when you think about it. Like the goal of any corporate executive is monopoly. No executive wants competitive markets.
Right.
Your goal is to get monopoly because that's where you can put a little cream on top. Because every day you wake up, if you have competitive markets, it's hard. So you want to capture your market. So your goal is essentially buy off a politician, buy out a competitor, do what you got to do to essentially dominate your market.
As opposed to innovate your way.
Innovate your way to the top. But Milton Friedman says all this rhetoric and it's just like, it's so divorced from reality. It's like he hasn't read a history book.
Right.
Once you have economic power, use it to capture the political system to reinforce your economic power. And you just see these systems compound.
So Friedman would consider himself to be a capitalist and believe that he was preaching this gospel of capitalism. And, in the introduction to your book by Eric Schlosser, it was, as I just said, it was an amazing introduction. Yeah. And he's quoting Adam Smith, whom everyone else would consider to be the prophet of capitalism. And Adam Smith sounds like Karl Marx. He's saying capitalism, the enemy of capitalism is monopoly. And we must, no matter what we do, we must stop that from happening or it will destroy the capitalist system.
Totally. The way I think about that Adam Smith point too is it's almost like a garden. Capitalism's like a garden. If you don't prune a garden, an invasive species takes over and destroys everything. And that's what's happened. I think that's literally what's the American economy right now. We're just another second Gilded Age, laissez-faire thing. And my hope for this moment is that last laissez-faire era ushered in a reform movement. Because they always go too far and they always crash and burn.
Yeah.
Look, literally just talking to my spouse earlier today, where you can see the stock market and it's just, you drive American, that is not the stock market. Most communities are not booming. Most people haven't boomed these last few years. I really think we're living like a 1920s parallel, where in the popular American imagination, people think of it as the flapper era.
Yeah.
But rural America in the 1920s was in a state of depression already. The farm markets were glutted. I think you see parallels here where higher income Americans with assets are enjoying urban decadence right now. They can travel anywhere, their assets have inflated. The people without assets, the other half of America, are struggling.
Right. So a couple things just so we understand, because people that are, got a lot of farmers listening to this, they aren't thinking about laissez-faire, they aren't thinking about Adam Smith. Tell me about what laissez-faire means to you. Like, that means total deregulation?
Total deregulation, but I would say more regulatory capture too.
Okay.
This is always what I tell my libertarian people, and you always see it the most in the meat industry. They'll use their economic power to then essentially push regulations on little people, to the average person, to essentially lock in their dominance. It makes it harder. So you're not playing on a level playing field. That's the biggest thing I've noticed.
Can you give me an example of regulation that would get pushed that would hurt the little person? I mean, I can think of some, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, I tend to think of manure management, industrial animal agriculture. But I'm not sure, I don't know the nuances of what pasture farmers deal with manure management. So let me think. Do you know which one?
Well, I can give one, which is that right now, organic certification has become quite expensive and very rigorous. It requires a lot of professional bookkeeping to be able to qualify. And if I'm Driscolls, it's no problem. I have a staff to do this, and relatively, it's a much smaller percentage of my gross sales to get certified. If I'm a small farmer, like 1 or 2 acres, and I'm grossing $150,000, $200,000, my certification fee is $2,000. That's a pretty noticeable chunk of my gross. So that's something that's clearly unfair to smaller producers, and they're carrying the burden of the program, but the impact of it is that they're being pushed out. I mean, organic certification is losing its small farmers, which is a tragedy.
But then the big ones are exploiting the image of the small farmers.
They are.
That's the funniest. It's like that's the dark undercurrent of all. I mean, the other one that comes to my mind is meat inspection.
Tell me.
It's pretty intensive on the smaller family farms, but the big boys now, the Trump administration ones, essentially let them inspect their own meat.
Yeah.
And so it's just like it's an additional regulatory cost you have that they don't have, and that's why anyone thinks that the market will solve this. It's just you're delusional. Yeah. Especially with meat, like JBS is the closest thing we have in America to a criminal organization. Yeah. And that's like, given the state of everything, that's saying a lot. But they bribe their way to meet monopoly level status. Like these brothers are ruthless. And
these, for people who haven't read the book yet, these are a huge meat cartel based in Brazil. Yeah,
largest meat company the world's ever seen. Okay. Number 1 in chicken, number 1 in beef, number 2 in pork, number 1 in leather.
And if you're eating a hamburger in America, what percentage of those hamburgers went through their hands? You have any idea?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, it's not even just America, it's pretty much like anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
There's a whole, what makes this even more complex is they're international now, and they buy, like for example, beef, they have assets in all the major beef production regions in the world. And so they have Australia, they have Brazil, they have America, and then like even in the biggest fights in recent years in beef has been over the label made in the USA. Which, first of all, that tells you how incompetent USDA is. That's not rocket science to figure out is a beef made in the USA or not. Right. But they were years went by for this label to mean something, where literally JBS could take rainforest beef, bring it into America, rewrap it, and say made in the USA because it was rewrapped.
Yeah, wrapped in the USA.
So all they do now is they play, because of these currency things in the globe, they can play currency rates off and shift meat, the movement of meat. It's like a lot of grass-fed meat in America now is coming from New Zealand because of the currency stuff.
Okay, so we'll use them just as an example. So the challenge is, wait a minute, aren't we able to get inexpensive meat because they're so efficient? Like, is it true? Has the cost of food gone down because of their involvement? I'm
glad you asked that question, because the first slide I show when I talk anymore is what the average American spends on food compared to other countries. And this is going to be a nerd moment. So it's a really good example of how data set can tell you two different things.
Yeah.
So when they talk, what Big Ag and that company would say is, well, percent of income, Americans spend the lowest amount on food ever for any country in the world. It's like 6 or 8%. That's factually true. Here's the thing, you shouldn't use that because that's a percent of income. most of the income growth has in America these last few decades have only been experienced by the top. That bottom half Americans, their incomes haven't grown. But when you look at what people spend at the register, Americans spend some of the most money for most other Western democracies on food. And we're about dollar for Italy. And what a dollar gets you in Italy is very different than America. I argue we're paying more for junk. Because we're also like the food that's cheap or affordable, it's a highly processed food, because that's where all the subsidies are going. Because we're subsidizing fruit roll-ups, we're not subsidizing produce. And so, but also we're being gouged for the junk we're getting, or for our meat market. So like they will justify employing children in slaughterhouses saying it makes cheap, and it's not even cheap. We're employing children in slaughterhouse and we're being gouged for it too at the same time. And
the reason that it's not cheap is that it's actually, the company is actually making a lot of money.
Beef is a really good example. Is RCAF, Cattlemen's Organization, has this fantastic graph I love to show people where, there's that phrase, a picture says 1,000 words. This is like the graph, the nerdy version of it, where it overlaps what ranchers get for their cattle and what you pay for beef at the store. Basically, up until 2015 in America, they were equal. And then it just diverges. And actually, the biggest gap happened summer of COVID, 2020, where it was just massively wide. And that, to me, that gap is monopoly capture, monopoly profits. It's tightened a little bit since then. My understanding is basically the cattle herd in America is collapsing because of the climate crisis.
I'm sorry, the cow herd?
The cattle herd.
The cattle herd is collapsing because of the climate crisis?
We're at 1950s cattle levels right now because of the drought in the West.
Because of the drought in the West. So we're not eating less meat, so more of it's coming from somewhere else.
Bingo. And then they're gouging. I mean, it's to me the best example of the gouging in the meat market is, so fun fact, McDonald's buys the most beef in the world. And usually for most in businesses, you treat your largest customer the best way. McDonald's filed lawsuits against the beef packers this past fall for price gouging. It tells you something when McDonald's even feels like it's being shortchanged here.
Yeah. So the reason that can even happen in the first place is because they're monopolies.
Yes.
And it's not a competitive marketplace, actually. Do I have that right?
Yes.
And then explain that.
It gets even more, I think this has been underappreciated. What makes it even more scary is it used to be to act like a monopoly cartel, pick your word here, but it used to be you had to get together a hotel next to interstate and collude. Those days are gone because of these data brokers. So a lot of these meat companies, they give their data over to a third-party vendor. AgriStats is like the famous one, where for example, in chicken, I sit there and tell them, next week I'm going to have 100 hatchlings. So all the other chicken companies tell them, this is what we're going to do. So then you can essentially forecast the industry and you can collude without being in the same hotel room. So it gives you that veil of ignorance, so you're not colluding, but you are. This is quasi-legal. The Biden administration was making moves to shut it down, but this allows for that data collusion. And here's the thing, it's happening across the American economy. The thing people might have heard of it, most famously, is in apartment complexes. A lot of apartment landlords are sharing their data. So they can actually collude, raise rents in cities.
So there aren't that many companies actually selling meat. I mean, there are a lot of companies, but they're all owned by a few, am I right?
Yep. There's that illusion of choice. I love to show the slide of all the brands JBS owns. It's like 8 pages, and like each slide has like 15 brands. And when I click through it, first of all, people's jaw drops, but also, if you notice, the word JBS is not in the single brand name. It's just, you just don't know. And for so long, we put it on the consumer to know. Oh, like if you want a better system, go to the store, buy a different product. Buy whatever brand. I don't want to say anyone's, but like, here's the thing, that you're not changing the system, you're bifurcating the system. But then what's happened in the last few decades is the monopolist, they just buy the fancy brand.
Right.
So it just becomes their premium product for the Whole Foods consumer.
Yeah. It's been my observation in the food system, I've been a farmer for 40 some years, and it looks like there's getting to be more and more choice and diversity in the market. So many brands to choose from, so many different labels. But my experience is that there are actually less and less choice. And the best choice isn't there at all anymore. There was a moment when, when I was young, the kind of food I grow wasn't on any supermarket shelf.
Yeah.
And there was a period, and I don't know when the peak was, somewhere around 2016 or something. There was a time where the major chains were buying local, or small organic dairies were thriving because they were getting paid a price they could do it on that scale. And now that's all crashed and they're going out of business, like crazy. And the major chains won't buy local. It's against their policy. They're no longer the same chains. They're owned by a few multinationals.
I think it's Whole Foods. We'll come back in a second. So my dad used to be in the beer business. He was a beer salesman growing up. Actually, my grandpa was too. My grandpa did the grocery stores. My dad did the gas stations in town. And my dad he did a lot of merchandising. So I always remember he'd pick me up and we'd have to go merchandise for something. And he explained this concept to me of different incomes want to think they're getting a different brand. Yeah. And to me, all these different brands are actually reflecting the bigger inequality of America, where that yuppie consumer really wants to think they're getting a different peanut butter than the Dollar General consumer.
Right.
So it's almost like as inequality intensifies in America, the brand options intensify. When it really because there used to be known as the premium product. Now there's the ultra premium product, and then there's a layer on top of that now. To your point on that 2016 magical moment, I really think it's Whole Foods. My understanding is pre-Amazon purchase, they let the managers really have a lot of say. And if they saw something cool at the farmer's market, they put it in the store, try them out. Which that's what you want. That's where innovation comes from. That's how people can grow a business. Amazon comes along, and here's the thing, this similar thing happened in Cisco, that food distribution company. They centralized procurement, where they lose that, they take away authority from the managers.
Yes.
And when that happens is, first of all, you lose that, it's that discovery that, at first, for me personally, it makes grocery shopping fun, that innovation.
Yeah.
It's I had a really good new yogurt at the Middlebury Co-op this morning.
Yeah, we got good yogurt in Vermont.
Fantastic, and I'm a yogurt junkie, so if I see any new yogurt, I always buy it.
Yeah.
And it's Amazon decentralized procurement, and also then it's really hard for that local producer to get shelf access because Amazon doesn't want you to do one store; they want you to do 100 overnight, and it's just you can't scale that fast. Or, for me, the two chapters people reach out to me the most is actually my groceries, one of them. It's a lot of Walmart suppliers.
Yeah.
And I just had someone tell me, I gotta be careful what I say, but just if they wanted to get on the shelf at Walmart, they had to do 400 stores at once. And also to even decide if Walmart wanted to carry it, Walmart wanted a box of each flavor for free for each store, just to see how it did.
For each store?
For each store.
Yeah.
For 400 stores. And so here's the thing, if you're starting a business, it's hard not to say no to that because that's such an opportunity to grow your business, but what a gamble. Yeah. That is that it's so unfair. This is the world's richest family, largest player in this country, but it used to be just a few years ago, you could just do one store and slowly build a business, and now it's that.
Yeah, I agree with you very much about the change to Whole Foods, but I don't think it was Amazon that started. I think it was Walmart.
Oh, really?
That's why they sold to Amazon, because they were struggling to compete with Walmart. Walmart took over everything, and I've never sold to Walmart. I literally don't know anyone who's ever sold to Walmart, but everyone I know has been really impacted because everything changes based on this. The reason Walmart is so successful is they sell the cheapest food. And it's lovely to see the Waltons, who are, wonderfully saying, we support regenerative agriculture. What's wrong with people? They need to step up and make more responsible choices when they shop. But the reason that they're able to give all that money to so-called regenerative agriculture is because they made all the money selling the cheapest food in the world.
Yeah. No, it's the delusion of it all.
Yeah.
It's really scary that a lot of regenerative brands are actually secretly owned by one of the Walmart grandsons, and no one wants to talk about that. But then also a lot of the food groups on the left are financed by the Walton family. Yeah. Because Walmart wants, my personal opinion, Walmart wants to heighten the food insecurity crisis in America because it wants to maintain food assistance funding levels.
Say that again. They want
to heighten the food insecurity crisis in America. People are hungry because they want to maintain
they
really
want this
high
SNAP program. so that where they spend it at Walmart.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but also keep in mind, a lot of Walmart workers are on SNAP.
Absolutely.
That is, it's just a backdoor subsidy. But there's no conversation over why can't people afford the food when they work full time.
Right.
There's no conversation over power. And for a lot of groups, I'm a board director for a few nonprofits. I understand it's hard to fundraise.
It's hard.
But you know when you get a check from the wall, it's not said, but you know what's going on. They want you to talk about certain things, and if you talk another way, who knows if you get renewed, and then you have to fire staff.
Yeah.
Just to add on to your point about Walmart, I love this phrase someone once told me is big boys beget big boys. The creation of Walmart creates other barons. It creates the Driscoll berry barons.
Right, because who's going to supply them?
Yep, because who's going to supply 4,000? Walmart wants one company to do 4,000 stores for 4 berries year round.
Yeah.
Whoever can fill that will be their supplier.
Right, right.
And then on top of it, I really do think the most powerful person in the American food system is a Walmart buyer. Because you buy, Walmart's market share is 1 in 3 groceries.
One out of 3?
Groceries. It's the same. Their market share is the same as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th combined.
Yeah.
No one else is in their league. So that person has so much power to it. And it's not, when you're negotiating with Walmart, you're not negotiating. It's supply and command.
Right.
I thought of them, I almost wrote that chapter this way as the closest thing America's ever had to a Soviet Union style Politburo. Because it's so much concentration to power, and it's so unequal. Yeah. It's Milton Friedman, like it's delusional to think that you can negotiate with Walmart. You don't give terms to Walmart.
Did I read from you, or did I hear from somebody else, that Walmart actually doesn't sell their groceries at a profit? They use that as the leader to bring everyone into the store. Is that true?
That's what you hear a lot in the grocery industry, is basically, I mean, this is the weird thing to say about some of these barons. There is a brilliance to them.
Sure.
I found Sam Walton to be fascinating, because it's also like, he comes from nothing, he started his first business, he was kicked out. His landlord saw him being successful, kicked him out of his store so his son-in-law can have it, and then he started over again. He really built his business, and he lived that life. But it was on vacation, he saw this French company called Carrefour. They have these things called hypermarkets in Europe, where it's both grocery store and soft goods. And that's what the Walmart Supercenter is. And actually the Walmart Supercenter we know today, it's a small version of the original thing called Hypermarket USA. But anyways, what Sam Walton realized is you grocery shop a lot.
Yeah.
So he can essentially just get you in the store. Doesn't need to make money when you buy groceries. If he sells to you at cost, that's great. He makes money when you walk over and buy a Christmas decoration. Right. You buy a DVD. That's his goal. And that's what you kind of see Walmart do, is they're slowly adding on things in the store to capture every dollar of your paycheck. So there's basically banks in Walmart now. They're called Walmart Money Centers. They have the pharmacies, they have tires, they're trying out vet clinics, they're trying out healthcare clinics. But here's the thing, when Walmart comes to town, you don't buy more milk. You just shift your consumption. So it's just gobbling that pie from other people. So I think of Walmart as killing downtown first, then it killed the mall. And I think in the next recession, a lot of these big box stores are going to close. Those Party Cities USAs, those Christmas trees, they don't make sense anymore.
So somebody who I'm close to said, yeah, Dad, it was my son, Dad. No. He said, yeah, Dad, but if you don't have money, you want to go to Walmart because it's affordable. And everywhere else, you're spending more money for the same stuff. What's your answer to that?
Yes and no. I mean, that's a hard one to answer, because with their dominance, they can lock in the lowest price, or they'll play games where... I gotta be careful here, because legally, generally monopolists use a term called most favored nations, where if you supply to Walmart, or if you supply to a company, they'll make you sign an agreement being like, you cannot offer this price, like, the price you offer us, it can't be lower anywhere else. So you essentially guarantee you have the lowest price. First of all, that should be banned. The thing with Walmart is, because I said with that stat earlier on food, you're not getting cheap food. The Walmart, and you're paying for it indirectly. You're paying more for like government assistance to the workers that are working full time for Walmart and then can't get by, so they're on food assistance, Medicaid, Section 8 housing vouchers, all that other stuff.
Which your tax dollars are
Paying for anyway. So it's like, it's that, and then it's just kind of, at some point you also ask yourself, what society do you want to live in? So Walmart's making vertical plays right now into beef and dairy. My understanding is people judge their grocery store based on your meat and dairy case. And Walmart felt like during COVID especially, it was being shortchanged by my other barons. So it's making vertical plays into those spaces.
So they're buying up big dairies.
They're building their own.
Or they're starting new.
Yep.
And they're creating CAFOs, confinement operations for meat and dairy.
So for dairy, they have my understanding is milk plants, but they don't actually own the confinements.
Okay.
But the question is, what society do you want to live in?
Yeah.
Where you have family farmers doing dairy, or do you just want another clog in the Walton family machine?
Right.
Are we all just gonna be serfs?
Yeah.
So your son, and also like that comment misses. I want to be very careful here because I don't want to put it on people right now.
Yeah.
The system change is, for example, my parents know what I do for a living, but my mom still gives me CAFO bacon. Most people are trying to get.
Because she loves you.
She loves. Well, the funny, I love reading ads in Iowa, grocery ads, because there's so much industrial food made in Iowa. They dump it on Iowa, so that way people outside of Iowa don't get used to the prices. So if there's an egg glut, eggs in Iowa will be 69 cents a dozen. But they're just trying to get by. I mean, especially right now with inflation and all this stuff, healthcare costs. People are like, right now that industrial food gets all the subsidy, the other food doesn't. So it's artificially cheaper than the other stuff. So people are going towards it.
It's government subsidy for production.
Yes.
And processing.
Yes.
Okay.
And labor. My guess is a lot of your members, you have to follow certain American rules on labor environment. If I do my produce production in Baja, Mexico, I'm probably not following those standards. So my costs are a lot lower. So then the consumer doesn't know that when they see that. So you're not competing on a level playing field here.
Yeah, I think 60% of our berries are coming from Mexico and South.
Yeah.
That are sold in America.
See, I don't know if it's
40% of the vegetables.
Oh, it's 40% of the vegetables, 60% of the produce. The fruit is imported.
That's right.
It's basically with the farm, anything that's labor intensive in America has moved offshore.
Yeah.
So California went nuts because that's capital intensive, not labor intensive. So it just went south of the border. But also keep in mind what I would tell your son is, it's not making good food. Like that berry is engineered for durability, not taste. And that's actually one of the things I didn't expect with this book, Dave, is how many people, especially older Americans, are like, this system is bad tasting food.
Yeah.
Especially for meat and dairy. Inputs really matter in dairy. A cow who eats pasture is gonna make much better breast milk than a cow eating corn in the New Mexico desert.
Right.
And I think an underappreciated thing is people are turning away from a lot of these products because they don't taste good.
Yeah.
Like I hate melon growing up because I was used to that kind of awful, tasteless melon. And then I had a good melon 2 years ago and you're like, oh wow, this is a whole,
right.
This could be good. And even carrots. Carrots is, the funny weird thing about writing this book is people tell me about all the barons I missed.
Yeah.
And there's a carrot baron, Gimway Carrots.
Grimway, yeah.
They're based in Indianapolis, which...
Grimway's based in Indianapolis?
It's owned by private equity. It's in Carmel, and it's a rich suburb.
Oh, because they got sold to Taylor or whatever. Yeah.
And so I'm just used to them. They don't taste anything.
Yeah.
And I had a good carrot a few years ago, and you're like, oh, these are actually really good.
Yeah.
But that's what's happening is a lot of people are moving away from these products or going to highly processed food because that highly processed food is engineered to be addictive or engineered to be good.
Yeah.
Like Fairlife is my dairy baron. That milk was engineered for 10, 15 years, tested. And I like it, I'm not gonna lie, but it's hard because they did a lot of that testing, whereas this industrial milk, people's bodies aren't responding well to it. They don't like the taste of it, so they're turning away from the product. So you're actually hurting the industry by the race to the bottom.
Right. I had a letter. I write a Sunday letter, and I wrote one about. I mentioned Jeff Dunn, who was the president of Coca-Cola North America, and his wife said, "You got to stop doing this. It's evil. You got to stop doing this. You're making poison." And so he did. The guy was in love, and he thought about it, and so he went and joined a carrot company, Bolthouse.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't think Bolthouse is great, but I think it's a lot better than Coca-Cola. And I got a letter from a guy who's a former professor of agroecology from UC Santa Cruz and now a farmer. And it was a great letter. And he said, Bolthouse isn't better than Coca-Cola. And Bolthouse and Grimway are 80% of the carrots sold in America.
Yes.
Those two companies. And they're not good. They don't taste good. They don't have the nutrition and health that a carrot could have. And yet they keep winning in the marketplace.
They do because, oh man, I have so many thoughts. That's such a good point. Let me back up and first say, this concentrated system is actually incredibly fragile. And in the long term, it's actually really expensive. Because look at COVID when it hit the hog industry. You couldn't slaughter all these hogs. You had to spend millions of dollars to kill a bunch. What used to be, rewind the clock 30 years in America, you just let the pig run around the yard longer until the things were back up and running. When we look at the bird flu right now, the bird flu that's happening in America is going to be the new norm. When you have this many genetically similar animals in metal sheds, you're just going to get disease outbreaks. And that's expensive. Let alone imagine what it is for those workers who just deal with animal death all day. Going back to those two having such a dominant positions, because they're so large, they can play that game where in the grocery store they can own the shelf space, buy out their competitors. There's a whole game of slotting fees in the grocery store where you buy shelf space and you prevent market entrance. That was actually something I was telling USDA how mad I was about. Not only were they doing nothing about the meat packing industry, they weren't actually addressing the monopolies, but they were financing all these new entrants, which there's no example in American history where you deconcentrate a market by financing new entrants. Okay. But they were doing nothing to help them get shelf access. Yeah. Because there's so many, going back to the Walmart example is, most of these grocers make their money now, they're renting out their shelf space. They call them malls without walls. Your eye level is everything. Even if you go online, you go to Amazon or Walmart, you'll see sponsored by, that's the same thing. And what's getting scary too is Walmart just bought a TV company called Vizio. Have you ever seen Vizio, their flat screen TVs? Okay. They bought them because of ads when you stream. So basically Walmart doesn't do slotting fees, like straight up pay to play. But you talk to anyone in the grocery industry, they know if you buy ads on Walmart TV, you're probably going to get good product placement. Yeah. It's the same thing. So it's even if you have a good carrot juice, how are you going to get on the shelf if Walmart wants you to give a free case? Are you going to buy ads? There's such a hurdle to even get in. Yeah. It's hard to get to the consumer. Right. And so it's not like they're offering the best product or the cheapest. It's just they're using their market dominance to lock in their dominance.
That was something that I understood by listening to Zephyr teach out. And as I understood the point, it was that when you have a monopoly player, they're no longer trying to innovate and improve what they make and offer it cheaper, offer it better, and come up with these new things that delight people. They're trying to figure out, how do I cut out all the competition? How do I own the shelf? How do I own the store? How do I own so that I'm the only one they can deal with? That's a very different form of competition.
Yeah, imagine just being a farmer or you're trying to create a business. You don't have time to think that way. No one's thinking that way. That's when you're massive at that point. You can pay people who can consultants essentially come up with monopoly strategies. Because it's never just one thing that locks in their dominance. It's the constellation of these tools that really lock in their dominance. Yeah. That's been an underappreciated thing. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's slowly by slowly they push these little things and they play in the margins. They play who's paying attention to slotting fees. These little things. Even when Walmart bought the TV maker, that really flew under the radar. Because it's not that big. I think it was $1 billion acquisition, which given Walmart's size is nothing. And most people see that and you're given the current antitrust laws in America, it's really hard to stop something so teeny tiny. Because it's also it's not like Walmart's buying it's not buying Target, the direct competitor. But you see, once you understand how they work, you're like, oh, this is a monopoly play, or this is an ad revenue play. Right. The big thing now in the grocery industry for the big boys are ad revenues. It used to be if you had a company and you want to advertise your juice, you buy an ad in the paper, you buy an ad in a magazine. There was like some middle third party, and then you'd go to the store. Then the person would see the ad and go to the store and buy it. The middle thing's gone. Now you buy ads on Target and Walmart. What TVs you see in the store, where shelf is on the space, where you're placed on the website. It's the same thing now.
It's all internal advertising.
It's all internal advertising
to the store.
It's massive growth for these monopolists.
Yeah. Can I ask something that you mentioned and I hadn't heard it? I mean, I've had this suspicion. There's a program called Transition to Organic, TOP, that the USDA created, and it remains to be seen whether it will exist after Brooke Rollins starts flexing her muscles as Secretary of USDA. And it was, as you say, the whole thing was about how can we get conventional chemical farmers to transition to become organic farmers. And I'm kind of torn between, cheering it on and saying something's wrong here, because if you convert somebody to become organic and they can't make a living, it's impossible for them to make a living. There's no model for that. The whole system is rigged. You haven't really changed much. And that's really the inflection point, is how do we make it that they can make a living, and then they'll come, we actually don't need to pay for anything. They'll figure it out.
That's where I've been doing a lot of thinking on, is just, let me step back and say, one of the biggest silver linings I've had doing this whole book thing is just seeing how bipartisan it is that the system's not working. And everyone's seeing it for different reasons. It's like that famous like that story of all these blind people are touching an elephant and they're describing a different part, but it's the same elephant. That's the food system. So you probably guess my politics, but the American Conservative praised my book. Said every conservative should read my book. I'd been on Maha's podcast. Steve Bannon requested a copy. There's weird things going on right here.
Yes.
But you're right. This old system's going to phase out. I think it's actually going to keep getting more expensive, eventually crash and burn, because it's not sustainable. You're playing with fire. And also ethanol is going to die, and no one wants to talk about that. But how do we build up the new system? How do we stabilize? How do we not only stabilize people doing it right, so they're not running uphill or running themselves into the ground? How do we essentially entice more people into this, showing that it is viable? And for me, it's really using schools to drive the supply system change. Because first of all, it's good politics. We've seen that already. There's no reason why, we're in Vermont right now. Every school child in Vermont should have Vermont milk, pasture-based.
Yeah.
We should, and then just kind of thinking that way, stabilizing these, because it's and part of this is I've been doing some reading on the New Deal. The New Deal didn't just happen. It started at the states. Actually, a lot of it came out of New York State and Wisconsin.
Right.
So I love that, because it's DC's the last to know. You have to have these proof of concepts. Start locally, brag about it, build up the program, so then when you have a moment of change, you know what to do. And you have something that's a proven concept. And here's the thing. People are doing this out there. You're seeing people trying to get their schools to do the right food. There's a cool program in northern Wisconsin called the Tribal Elders Box, where literally, historically in America, we dump surplus food on Native American tribes. But now they're setting up a program where they're buying from Native American farmers to get food to Native American people and to teach them culture that's been lost. And you just don't do that overnight. But
right.
This is...
Those programs are really, they're being cut off right now.
They're being cut off right now. And they're the hardest to do when they're small, because the cost structures are so... The first mover is always the hardest. But the more and more you do it, the easier it gets. And that's I gave this talk yesterday in Middlebury, and I told them Middlebury needs to be a leader here. Yeah. And part of it is I went to Grinnell in Iowa, a small college, and across, behind Grinnell was one of the most famous organic farms in the state of Iowa, Grinnell Heritage Farms. My understanding was the college promised to buy a lot of food from them, local food. They didn't. We were being served Baja California produce. First of all, just think of it from a pure climate perspective of just one's across the street, one's not. And also there's a whole concept of taste and dignity of the work. But the college with a multi-billion-dollar endowment, thanks to Warren Buffett, didn't do that. And so that farm went bankrupt. Yeah. And it really sent a shockwave in that community of if they can't make it, how can we? Because they got a lot of good press. And these colleges need to be shamed.
Yeah.
it's just those colleges, they're nonprofits, and nonprofit comes with responsibility because you're not paying taxes. So you should be a leader here. You should be ones figuring this out. You're gonna pay more because right now the local food doesn't get the subsidy as frozen square pizza that comes from the Amazon rainforest. Right. So it's just accept that is a cost cost you have to bear, but you're in a privileged position in society. You lead it so then other places can follow you.
Do you think that change, when it comes with colleges being an obvious place to lead that change, do you think that will come from having persuaded the university, the board of directors, or from persuading the students who go up and demand it?
Students need to be persuaded to do something. This is such a weird thing to say. Those students don't realize, going back to the beer example, they're buying an ultra premium product. They are the customer. And those, especially the full pay kids, those colleges will respond to what those full pay kids want. Because that's what they're all chasing. Yeah. I'm a Pell Grant kid, and they lost money on me. But right. They're going to respond to student pressure. But you have to, the time to writing nice letters is over. You got to play ball. There's been so many, like, if they make a commitment they don't fulfill it, you need to hold them account. You need to shame. Yeah. This might be my Catholicism showing, but I'm a big
that's okay.
believer.
You believe in constructive shaming. I'm going to interview, do you know Jennifer Jacquet?
No.
Oh, she's an academic, and she really believes in constructive shaming.
I don't even use the word constructive.
Yeah, she doesn't either. That was my addition.
I love your New England, it's, especially at this moment in America, this is power politics. Yeah. Do not bring a machete to machine gun fight. Yeah. It is, especially what's happening with Brooke Rowland is just a hack for oligarchs. That's what her whole career has been, and that's what she will be. This will only get worse. Her first move was speeding up the kill lines on the hogs. One of the most dangerous jobs in America, making it more dangerous. That is who she is, and that's what we should expect. So we've tried doing the nice thing. It didn't work. The system has gotten worse. And I think, for me, I learned so much about the success the big tech antitrust people have had because they came here to play ball. And Zephyr Teachout has been a really good leader on that, of going to the media, telling people, shaming people. When people are corrupt, calling them out. Also fighting for positions of power. That's my biggest thing, is who should have a seat at the table? Who should be the Secretary of Agriculture? Who should be the Undersecretary of Agriculture? All these other positions where that's what really matters, is who's going to be at these decisions of power. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm feisty if you can't tell. But that's like...
No, feisty's good, all right? We need feisty, but yeah, I'm fascinated. You were talking about the kind of amazing bipartisan potential of our movement, and that I think I heard, was it Steve Bannon who was really supporting that Lena Khan should stay in?
Yes.
Amazing.
I saw that in person. I was in the room. I was at an antitrust conference in DC, and you're just like, who knows what to make of that man? I will say, I'm a big believer, things happen in America when weird bedfellows get together. Yeah. And I think on this issues especially, there's a lot of hollow rhetoric from one side, hold their feet to the fire. Yeah. You say you're for certain, look at the Great Plains. Those all Republican senators. They're all full of meat. Yeah. What are they doing for the rancher? The cow rancher in America is dying right in front of them. They're doing absolutely nothing.
Right. I saw a hearing that was hosted by Ron Johnson and Bobby Kennedy on Make America Healthy Again. It was called something else, Healthy Food Roundtable, and had all of these kind of social influencers get up and speak. The Food Babe and all these people. And I agreed with what everybody said. And Ron Johnson was talking about his personal conversion thanks to talking to Bobby Kennedy. And he finally realized he had to stop eating all this ultra-processed junk food and really eat good food. And one senator who was there and spoke was Mike Crapo, and I think Idaho, and a senator. Well, he was one of the people who signed the letter to Kennedy about don't let Maha be hijacked by environmentalists, which is a funny thing to say to somebody who was an environmental activist his whole career. But it's a real thing. And so we see that it's coming from all over, and there is the possibility of a bipartisan coalition, but it's not going to be easy because a lot of members of that bipartisan coalition are funded by and are steadfast supporters of the very worst of big food.
Yes, but industry wins when people don't pay attention, and people are paying attention right now. Who knows the pureness of people's motives? But I'm a big believer in a Big Ten approach. So there's this phrase in Italian called the politics of the artichoke, where you take off your enemy one at a one, like the way you eat an artichoke. I love thinking of politics that way. To me, go after the worst actor, and the worst actor in the food system is JBS, that slaughtering company. Get everyone to unite, because you need to, right now I notice in the food system, especially in rural America, no one believes in the government. They don't believe in USDA. All they've heard from their whole life are lies. You need to put a point on the board. And you do that by going after the worst actor, showing people it's possible. And who knows, you might not agree with everyone, like their things, but if this is something you can get everyone to agree on and then draw a lot of attention to it.
Okay. This is really important, Austin. So, do you believe that the USDA is capable of redemption?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is, I know, saying something.
I hope it's true. So tell me, how do you think that we go about that? Because I agree with you. I deal with so many people who have so lost any faith in that. And we started the Real Organic Project because we didn't think it would be possible to reform the USDA unless maybe Bernie Sanders got elected president, and then who knows what happens. But you know, that's a very long shot. So tell me about how we're going to reform the USDA.
I don't think, we live in a time, no one can predict anything anymore.
Okay.
Who would have thought 10 years ago, this is the moment we're in? I think right now, first of all, I'm a big believer, you should always just execute your own strategy. What is your vision? What are you trying to do? What's your end goal for the food system? And then work backwards. I'm going to be forever shaped by President Biden's appointment of Lena Khan. Lena Khan and I are the same age. She's that one that actually got me into all this. 10 years ago, I was a Treasury tax economist. And I wrote a paper on monopolies because we had on our desk all this research data. And it was actually seeing monopolies in the food system that really caught my eye. Because like in Milton Friedman economics, like, you know, part of when pharmaceuticals, you get a monopoly. That's part of the reward for coming up with a patent. But in the food, in theory, anyone can make chips or pop. But for some reason, I was seeing monopoly, and I was researching around. And also, this is 2016. I was a Bernie person. I was at Treasury, which is all these prep school kids. And I was like, you don't get what's going on in America. Reached out, and before Lena went to law school, she was a journalist, and she wrote about chicken monopolies. So Lena and I got coffee, and she's the one that showed me, hey, there's this whole lost antitrust thing going back 100 years. And keep in mind, this is a young woman of color. And she was just like, and to think just in a few years she'd be appointed to the most powerful position in the world for anti-monopoly enforcement. Not only do that, put points on the board, stop the Kroger-Albertson merger. The Trump administration just was reported recently in the Wall Street Journal is going forward with the Facebook trial. They're going forward with Google being monopolist. So not only is she, because you don't change these things overnight, but she's slowly shifting it. On top of it, she goes to any law school in America and the kids all adore her. They want to be her. For them, she is that statue of the little girl taking on the bull on Wall Street. Yeah. And I saw how quickly that changed. And so that to me is what gives me hope, is the right people in power could change the USDA overnight. Because there's so much power in positive USDA could, it just hasn't been utilized. It's like it's a muscle that has been worked out forever. Yeah. But you get the right people in there who want to do something great, you could really do some really cool things. And that's what kind of gives me hope. Is to me the success for a Real Organic Project is what you guys get a point. Someone for your organization's under secretary, and then makes the labels mean something, and then you don't need to exist anymore.
That's what we would like.
What a simple you know what I mean?
That's right. We don't want to exist.
But isn't that like what it really internalized to me is what we're talking about is so traditional. The system now is radical because they will always paint us as radicals, and we need to flip it and be like, you're the radical one. It's radical that one man does 5 million hogs in America. Making a label mean something, dear God, we're not curing cancer here. You know what I mean? Like that's what gets me so mad is like the incompetency and the corruption. And like when I read my slaughtering baron chapter, my anger is at Vilsack because I'm so mad at his incompetency to make the label "Made in USA" mean something. And then they always come up with excuses, and like that is, I gotta be careful here. Is whatever you think of the Maha stuff, we're in this moment politically in America partly because of failure of people like Vilsack. Is people have a right not to trust what's in the food right now. There's things in like USDA, it dragged its feet on really basic things. And there's no reason why they couldn't get things done. I mean, wars were fought in the time they tried to like come out with their meat industry regulations. Fought and won. It's just like, it's not, I just want to call that out because it's not acceptable. Like, and they're really good at playing people on the left. They'll come give little talks. They'll say the right words. All I care about are like, what are your results? Are you delivering or are you not? And you need to shame them because these people like Vilsack, they're not going to respond. They're not going to do the right thing. Their history and their career trajectory said otherwise. And they will respond to shame when you air their dirty laundry.
Let me ask you a question about something that we work on a lot, and it's so tied up with your book. In fact, the major player in this is Driscolls. So I got drawn into this as a movement. I was always a movement. I was always an organic activist, but I was just a farmer. I mean, I believed deeply in what I was doing. And I got drawn in because the standards were changing and they were certifying soilless hydroponic production as organic, which was completely against the law and the rules. How could this be? Doesn't anyone in the USDA understand what it is that they're administering? And it actually looked like we were going to win for just a little bit. The trade association was like, let's make a deal. And then we discovered that actually the biggest hydroponic producer in the world being certified as organic was Driscolls. And I said, oh, we're never going to win. You know, I had no idea we were up against Godzilla. I thought there was this one kind of big family company.
You didn't win that fight, but the war's not over. You tried negotiating. You came to the table trying negotiating. You should aim for the positions of power next time at that table. Who decided? You know what I mean? Like that labeling the conversation, was that USDA then?
Yes.
What branch?
National Organic Program, which is an agricultural marketing service.
AMS? So the Undersecretary for Regulatory Marketing Programs? Yeah. You should aim for that position next time.
Yeah.
You should come, the next president, and be like, we want this person. And I assume the conversation will go very differently if it's someone who understands your framework versus someone who just wants to be a lobbyist.
We actually had that person. It was a woman named Eleanor Starmer. And
was this the walnut farmer?
No, older, before that.
Okay.
So Kathleen Merrigan brought this woman in, and Kathleen was indeed a beachhead in the USDA. We don't agree about a lot of stuff, but we do agree about a lot of stuff. And Kathleen brought in some really wonderful young women, and one of them was Eleanor. She worked in Vilsack's office. The AMS came open, and he put her in as acting head. And we had a petition. We sent a letter asking them to create a moratorium on certifying new hydroponic until this issue could be resolved. And we had a meeting with her at the USDA, three of us, and she brought in the head of the National Organic Program, and she said, I'm sorry, I wrote the letter, I agreed with you, I wrote the letter, and the lawyers here said, you can't do that. We're just going to get sued. And I believed her. I don't think she was just blowing smoke up my pant leg here. You know, so we actually had a very friendly, supportive person in that position, but the institutional weight.
So two things. I love how weedy this is getting. I've heard from a lot of people the legal office of USDA is actually a barrier. Lena dealt with that a lot at the Federal Trade Commission. You had certain people of the old guard have a certain framework. So part of it is staffing up these agencies with people that don't view themselves as hacked for industry, getting in legal minds who have a certain framework. I should also say USDA has a really hard time hiring because who wants to go work? I mean, everyone kind of sees USDA now. Who wants to go work for something that's essentially helping feed, corn syrup to kids? But the right people the right appointments, I think would really help inspire a lot of young college grads who want to do this stuff into those positions. That also said is, there's this great book that really shaped my thinking here 10 years ago called The Chicken Shit Club.
I don't know.
Lawyers are really, it's really good about how the legal profession just became chicken shit. They're too afraid to lose. It's okay to lose sometimes because you want to show how broken the law is. Like if you think if you think it sounds right, morally right, just like it's just such an aha thing, file that lawsuit. Because sometimes you need to show lawmakers, hey, look how broken the law is, and we can't get something simple as this done.
Yeah.
It's okay, and I think that's part of the lawyers is they're just so risk adverse, and I don't know. I've also been dealing with a lot of corporate lawyers lately, and they just don't get it. Like there's something. The law profession is a weird profession. Either you're basically a handmaiden, or like you're an aide for oligarchs, or you make nothing and you work in legal aid.
Yeah.
The middle class in the legal profession is really hollowed out, especially as the legal profession is consolidated. And that's a certain type of person who is in elite corporate law.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a tangent, but
No, but that's interesting. I mean, you're saying it's like everything. Everything is consolidating.
winners take all.
I'm just amazed at how hard it is to challenge that. And you have some optimism or hope. Maybe not optimism, but at least hope. Am I right?
Oh, yes, because, I mean, going back, let's drill down the ethanol part. Even driving to this conversation today, I was going through the Green Mountains. Why am I seeing cornfields? That makes no sense in this climate. It's so dumb. That should be pasture. That should be... I've seen corn in the dumbest places in America. Next to like beaches in Delaware, next to like in North Dakota, that's way too far north where it should be, or the water's not there. And it goes back to ethanol. The largest use of corn now in America is ethanol. And ethanol is a farce. It's not good for the climate. If you think it's good for the climate, you think the world is flat. That's going to die. It's going to die fast. Cars are going to move to hybrids and EVs. That's just a fact. I believe it was Norway last year. Bloomberg reported every single car sold in Norway last year was battery. So this market's going to change. It's going to crater. You're going to have millions of acres in America come online. And what are we going to do with it? And that's a jump ball. Vilsack wanted to put ethanol in airplanes. Someone said that with a straight face and called that good for the climate. I want to put animals back on pasture. But this is going to be a battle. And like to your example of like, view that as a learning lesson of you got so close and you saw this certain game and you're like, okay, let's try a different strategy. And for me is I saw quickly the antitrust world change because of Lena. Yeah. And it's not only just her appointment is that ecosystem too was protecting her. I mean, she was the Wall Street Journal, I kid you not, it was like every day or every week was attacking her. And they were calling it out. They were shaming also Democrats that weren't, that were doing the bidding of industry. You gotta have I think the mindsets people need to change from understanding I don't want to say collaborative to insurgency, but especially me, you're going up against an industry that employs children and doesn't care. Yeah. You have to act differently. Yeah. Asking them to be better is not good enough. It's not going to do anything.
One of the things that has come to me in, the last 10 years, is that the organic movement, I feel it has to go back to where, for me, it started, which was, it was a movement about who we were. It wasn't just about how we farmed. It was tied up with thinking different thoughts and trying to do things differently, and a different kind of respect for each other, and a different kind of respect, of course, for the land. But it's not going to be enough to farm well in a totalitarian society, right?
Yes.
That by definition, even if you're, cover cropping and doing and rotating and doing all these good things, if you're living in a place where there's no freedom and no respect and no care, it's not the revolution I wanted to go to.
Yes, but what you just articulated is the dream. That's so important to have is where are you trying to get the ship to? Is how do these are going to be very choppy waters, and this thing could break so many different ways, and you just don't know. But you got to keep working towards your vision, because you can't, so much could happen so fast. Yeah. Even when you're saying that to me, is you have an ecological mindset versus what I think is so much now people are hardwired to have an Excel mindset. And I noticed, it took me a while to understand that, where talking to farmers in Iowa, I realized all they can think about is corn maximization, yield maximization, because that's what the system right now is designed to do. The Farm Bill is designed for only grains and overproducing grains. So if you don't do that, you probably go broke. So right now your brain is, how do I get the most corn out of this field, regardless of the ecological damages, what you're doing, to the quality, whatever. And to the organic movement is, I talked about the death of ethanol, yada, yada, yada. Iowa has the second highest cancer rate now in America.
Iowa has the second highest cancer rate in America.
Yes.
This place that was Eden when you were a kid. And that cancer is a result of agriculture.
I don't want to be sued.
Okay.
But I will
say things to me, by all of appearances.
Logic says it would, in Des Moines, all they talk about is Iowans drink too much. We're no different than Wisconsin does more. Or we fake bake too much, which, look at me, no. The most logical answer is this production model. This production model is killing us. It's killing us. And you're starting to see literature where even in urban Iowa, they say no more than 10 parts per million for the nitrates in the water. Scientists now think it should only be 5. And there's days in the spring in the largest cities in Iowa, Cedar Rapids and Des Moines, where it's up at 7 or 8. This is even for the densest part of the state, this is getting really scary, let alone what's going on in these rural communities. Imagine the nitrate levels for a rural daycare using well water, who doesn't test or rarely test, or what's going, because it's not like it's consistently high, it's so clearly tied to something happens in the spring in Iowa that causes nitrate levels to spike. My hunch would be we're not using cover crops, so people, by the way, nitrates, Koch brothers are massive holders in nitrates because they bought the old farmland assets. There's this whole marriage between big fossil fuels and big ag. So people are over-applying nitrates on their farmland. My hunch is, and it goes right into the creek, and there's very little buffer strips in Iowa because most of that land's rented out. Most land in Iowa is owned by non-Iowans now, and people are trying to maximize their corn, so they farm literally up to the creek, and that nitrates are just going right into the water that goes right into what you consume. That's what I would assume is driving this. I've learned so much about these legal lawsuit stuff, but it's it just sounds like common sense. It's just we shouldn't be doing it just went too far. Yeah. And it's killing us, and it's going to be in Iowa. It's getting worse in Iowa, the cancer crisis, and at some point this system can't keep going. It's not sustainable. Industry knows it, so they're doing the thing they did back in the 90s where Monsanto famously made examples of people. Or they would sue people for seed. They're going to keep
the chilling effect.
The chilling effect. I mean, Trump,
the Apple producers sued CBS for the 60 Minutes episode on Alar for $50 million, and they lost. But
it kills every other news outlet.
But all the news outlets, and then they sued Oprah for Mad Cow, and everyone goes, we'll probably win, but that's an awful lot of threat and danger for running this story.
But then add on to the state of the news system now in America, where so many of these papers have a fraction of their budget. Even for me, when people don't realize when you sign a book contract now, because the book industry is so consolidated, the liability's on me.
If you have a book published as the author, if anything gets said that is liable,
you can sue the crap out of me.
Out of you, not out of the publisher.
There's no authors have to pay for their own fact checking. In the book world is, especially right now, people want to read fantasy. They want to read escapism. And so the book world, for a nonfiction book, it's really hard. And so I spend my own money to fact check. Every chapter costs me about $1,500 to fact check. That's why I have 1,000 footnotes. As my husband's a lawyer, was we got to make sure everything's, T's are crossed, I's are dotted. And that's scary. I mean, that really, you have to be, I could take this gamble now because I don't have a kid. Yeah. But I'm also, I'm a big believer you take your gambles when you're younger. Because come sue me, all I have are books. Right. Have my books. But that said, what I always tell people is, going back to that kind of insurgent mindset you should have right now, your best friends are journalists. That's what I learned from the big tech people. See something, say something. These journalists won't make very little. They're moving a mile a minute. If you see something that doesn't smell right, send an email. Or if you see a story and they quote someone that they probably shouldn't quote, that might be corrupt or they got something wrong, don't get mad at them online. Send a nice email. Hey, I saw that you quoted this person. You should really know they're taking all this industry money and not talking. You know what I mean? Like, do that kind of, build those relationships. Yeah. You want to put as much sunlight on this space as possible. Yeah. It's just like that. These stories just aren't being told, is what I realized. It's like a lot of the news in the middle of America and agriculture has been hollowed out. So it's a lot of industry-generated news. Yeah. At the same time, too, the New York Times only seems to care about the fancy vegan restaurant. So it's just missing what these markets. So just send emails to reporters, like, you should really look here. Right. Like, there was a big story recently, I believe the Wall Street Journal, about this kind of corrupt maple syrup academic. And it was just like, in my head, I was like, well, you could do this for every commodity in America. The person who's just the go-to hack for the industry, who just takes corporate money and says a bunch of BS. Yeah. But that you got to think that way. And it's also fun. It's fun to, like, one little example personally is I was in Western Iowa working on a new barren and this last summer, and I was just having dinner with a friend, and she was telling me Iowa has this great program to control the deer population where hunters can, kill a buck and they can give it to a local meat locker, and the state subsidizes the processing of the meat to then give to the food bank to give away free meat. Great program. Here's the thing. She was telling me no one was checking for lead shrapnel in the meat. So it could be lead-tainted meat being served at the food pantries. So I let a reporter know. And so recently the story was published 6 months later. Turns out only the state of Minnesota right now has a program mandating the testing, or like they scan the meat to see if there's any lead fragments in the meat. Now we know. Now people can, that story's out there, this reported all that information, now people can go out there and ask our legislators to do something similar.
All right, Austin. So we should probably end sometime here. Not that I'm slowing down. This is very interesting. But people always ask, and I'm sure you get it all the time, well, what can we do? If anybody who's listening to this hasn't read Barron's, you should read it.
It makes a great gift.
It does make a great gift. I've given away a number of copies. You sent me very nice 4 autographed copies. They're all gone. I just, because I say, you've got to read this book. You've got to read this book. And they do. It's so readable but so rich. But when people ask you, as I'm sure you hear all the time, well, what can we do? What are your thoughts about that?
Individually, first of all, food is how you put nutrition, how you power your body. What do you want to put in your body? Do you want to put garbage? Do you want to put good stuff? So if you can, buy the good food. Understanding like that's what you're doing. But I really tell people, I'm hesitant to put anything on, most of these farmers are barely getting by. I always joke the only farmer in the free market is a CSA farmer because they get no farm bill subsidy and they're usually making so little, they're almost giving away their labor. Whereas like the biggest welfare people tend to be the largest entities. Or I should say government assistance. But if you just care about this stuff, what I really tell people is focus on local procurement. That Middlebury's, your colleges, your schools, tell them, hey, like pair up the local farmer doing it right with the school and pressure that school to buy locally. Add your voice to that chorus. Help that farmer out. I mean, especially in these moments when things are getting so volatile in DC, focus locally. Focus on the local success story. First of all, it's a great distraction for right now. And you want to feel in this moment that you can make something better. And you can make the most impactful change right now at the most local level. So do that. I can't say that enough. Because you got to have proof of concepts. Because these things always ebb and flow. I'm a big believer in that in American history. And so, but when when we have a moment to change, what's our game plan? And to have these proof of concepts is so important. Because not only we can sit there and point, hey, we should scale this, here's the boundary, here are the barriers we hit, how do we fix them? But also you have people that ran the programs who then have positions of power. Hey, this person ran a really cool program, they should be this position at USDA. Yeah. How do we, because you want to create heroes. Because even like that Lena Khan thing, we're saying Lena Khan a lot, she's part of a movement. Yeah. She represents a group of people. And part of that movement really helped create her into a hero. But people need that right now. Right. And like, don't forget, like the little example is I go back to meat. is part of why I like talking about meat is we've dealt with this before. And even when we talk about it, we talk about Teddy Roosevelt going after the meat. That just didn't happen overnight. The first antitrust laws in the world came out of Iowa as farmers mad. And it was a slow movement of people starting at the local level that finally got to the federal government. And the laws were passed, the Sherman Act, but it took a few presidents for one to finally do something. So I say this all because when we tell history, we tend to truncate it. But like even like this Lena Khan, big tech things, this is happening really fast in the grand scheme of American history. Like you have Trump's people at the Federal Trade Commission essentially keeping a lot of what she did, which is maybe one of the outliers in this administration. Yeah. Like Mark Zuckerberg's been running to the White House, giving out millions of dollars checks to stop it. And it was reported in the Wall Street Journal that Trump's Federal Trade Commissioner told him to ignore Mark and continue on with the Facebook case. So I say all that is just focus on local, is really focused on those local concepts, those local institutions, local schools, local colleges, because it's not going to be easy, especially as the federal government's, you're going to see Brooke cut all this money. It's only going to get worse. So is there a way to infill that with state money? Is there like, what can you do locally? Also, these colleges spend so much money on like fancy gyms. It's like, really, how about we feed our students? That matters a little bit more than a $100 million gym. Right. It's a question over priorities. Do you want to feed chicken fingers to kids?
Do you think, I'm just curious, you think the colleges can build this into a competitive advantage for recruiting students?
Yes, and let them know that. That's actually, to me, the sweet spot for trustees. Tell them that. Your full-paid kid that's willing to pay $80,000 a year to go to this kid college wants a good strawberry. Yeah. And it's not, in the grand schemes of how they spend money at these schools, it's not a lot of money. Yeah. It's just no one, I think part of it is just the kind of, you saw some progress on it, and it just feels like just given the state of the world and everything, there's just been a regression of it. Yeah. And it's just like you have to double down and keep people's feet to the fire. And I mean, that's how change happens. Sometimes you step forward, step back, but then you learn a lesson. How do you take then 2 steps forward? It's just knowing it's not going to be easy, but you need, I think more and more the food system is showing itself how broken it is. And in ways that I think when these changes were done 10 years ago, people did not realize. I think COVID actually showed a lot of people how broken it all is. And I also think taste has really collapsed in the food system in the last 10 years. I think that has been one of the most universal things. It's just, God, I mean, I hate saying this in Vermont, Ben & Jerry's is not that good anymore. We did a tour the other day and you're like, it's just not worth the calories, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just, the innovation's gone, Unilever ran into the ground. Right. It's sad, because most people think of Vermont, they kind of think of that brand, and it's just, what happened to Ben & Jerry's is kind of the story, the bigger story of the American economy. That's what was this innovative brand, got swallowed by a big corporate entity, hollowed it out. But who knows? I mean, you're seeing the founders fight for the company again. Yeah. So maybe they can wrestle it away, maybe they can.
I think they just fired the CEO for
Palestine stuff.
Being political.
But then you're seeing the Wall Street Journal reported the founders are essentially trying to put together money to essentially buy it back from Unilever.
Oh, great.
So who knows? I mean, that's why I mean, like, this stuff is such a volatile moment. Yeah. This thing could break so many ways, and you just focus on the hope. I can't say that enough. Because that's what I love about this doing locally, focusing on local schools. People, they always want the opposite of what they have. The DC is only going to get darker and darker and meaner. People want to see other people be nice to each other. And they want to see like just good, like, Alice Waters is really good at this, of just like sitting you down and like, she'll give you a good food and then ask for something. Because who isn't happy after a good meal? Like, you eat Taco Bell, no one feels good after Taco Bell, like, but you have a really good meal. I mean, that's something I noticed at my wedding. My big thing at our wedding, we got married, we had a small town gay Jewish Iowa wedding. And my big thing was pasture meat. And the amount of Iowan, my mom's one of 12, Irish Catholic, and the amount of Iowans that told me how good my pork was. And I was just like, you're used to industrial pork. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, this is just old-fashioned pork. And it was we just had literally cottage cheese, pork, squash, a few other dishes. And, this wasn't complex cooking. It was just a simple thing, but it tasted so good. Yeah. And it's just going back to that traditionalism that I think is really, it's not threatening to people. You're not being scary. You're not like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, I don't want to scare people. I want people to be scared of what we have. and focus on the hope of the tradition. Like, because the industry will always attack people like us as being the crazies, the radicals.
Okay. Austin Frerick, thank you so much.
Thanks again for having me on, Dave.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Real Organic Podcast. Our movement is growing because you're subscribing and sharing these podcasts with your friends. So keep it up and leave us a rating and a review as well so that others can find us. You can find a video version of this interview on our newly designed website, realorganicproject.org, or on our YouTube channel. And you can join us every Thursday for a new episode featuring voices from the organic movement. See you next time.